A man sits at his desk writing a journal entry on a notepad. He's a programmer, but he doesn't trust his computer. He needs to make sure he can write his thoughts down in a place where nobody can mess with his words. Not that anyone's been doing that, he thinks. Nah, that'd be crazy. It just helps to have them physically written down, helps him focus and think. Plus, memory can play tricks on you. Best to write things down to remember them correctly. His apartment is so small, the walls are closing in. Maybe that's the reason for his funk lately. He should have paid a little extra for a nicer place, but saving money on rent was a powerful lure. Now he's stuck in one of the tiny apartments in the basement of his building. It doesn't help there's no windows to tell day from night, only the clock on the bottom right of his computer. He's a programmer, so he works from home a lot and keeps strange hours. His only clue that the sun has risen or fallen comes from that tiny clock at the bottom right of his screen. He's working on a big project. Pressure just to get it done is intense, but just sitting and typing for hours and hours on end can play tricks on your brain. But he just can't shake the feeling that that's not really it. He can't even remember when he started to feel like things were just a little off, or how. Lack of human contact isn't helping, and none of his friends seem to have been online in days to chat over Messenger. One of his few actual friends promised he'd call when he got back from the store yesterday? Yeah, yesterday. But he never called. Or maybe he didn't get the call. Cell reception is terrible in the basement. Maybe he just needs to talk to someone, or at least just get outside. He doesn't bother shaving before going out. 2-day growth still on his face. At least he had changed his shirt though, discarding that ratty one he'd been wearing for who knows how long. With it being lunchtime outside, he figured he'd run into at least one friend. Inexplicable fear as he opens his cramped apartment door. Almost like a tinge of agoraphobia. But where did that come from? Maybe it's just from being cooped up and not talking to anyone for so long. Waiting for him outside his apartment is a dreary hallway at the end of which is a huge steel door leading to the furnace room. There's 2 soda machines down there, but the first and only time he used one, the soda was 2 years expired. He leaves his apartment, closing the door softly and walking in the opposite direction. Why did he do that though? Why is he moving so quietly? He turns it into a game, moving silently so as to not break the steady hum of the soda machines. But as he gets upstairs into the front door of his building, he's in for a real shock. It wasn't lunchtime. It was dark outside, and it was late. He could tell by the silence of the street outside. The special kind of quiet where you can hear the wind blow sends shivers down his spine, and he chalks it up to his body imagining the touch of the chill wind. Yeah, it's comforting to think that that's all it is. It doesn't feel right to go outside, so instead he lifts his cell phone up to the window and checks his bars. Presto, full bars. Now he could finally hear someone else's voice. He's so giddy with excitement he forgets his previous fears. Pressing the speed dial, he puts the phone to his ear, expecting to hear his best friend Amy's voice. But after one ring, the phone goes silent. Confused, he holds the phone to his ear for 20 seconds, then the phone finally hangs up. As he goes to dial her number again, his phone suddenly vibrates with an incoming call, startling him so hard he nearly drops it. Hello? The sound of his own voice startles him. He hadn't realized just how long it'd been since he'd heard a human voice, or even his own. Hey, who's this? The caller sounds about his age, young and male. John, he replies. Oh, sorry, wrong number. Then a click and the line went dead. What in the world just happened? He leans back against the brick wall and pulls up the recent call list, the number completely unfamiliar. Then he jumps out of his skin as the phone vibrates in his hand again. He presses the talk button and says nothing. John? Waves of relief wash over him. It's Amy's voice. Hey, it's you. Who else would it be? Oh, the number. I'm at a party on 7th Street. My phone died, just as you called me. This is someone else's phone. Oh, okay. Where are you? His eyes glance around at the drab whitewashed walls and heavy metal door with a small window looking outside. At my place, just feeling cooped up, didn't realize it was so late. You should come over. Nah, I don't feel like looking for some strange place by myself in the middle of the night. I think I'm just gonna keep working or go to bed. He didn't want to admit that the real reason was the way the deathly silent streets outside scared him a bit. Nonsense, I can come get you. Your building's close by, isn't it? How drunk are you? You know where I live. Oh, good point. I guess I couldn't walk over. Not unless you want to waste half an hour. Right, all right, well, I gotta go. Good luck with your work. He watches the numbers flash once as the call ends, and then the droning silence of the old apartment building washes over him again. The 2 strange calls and eerie quiet outside only make him feel that much more alone. Then a terrifying thought hits him, maybe born of too many scary movies, maybe of real fear. What if some horrible monster peered into that small window set into the steel exterior door right now, spotting him? Some nightmarish creature that preyed on those who strayed too far from other living people. The thought alone was enough to cause him to rush back home, closing the door as swiftly and silently behind him as he could. He felt a little silly, safe inside his apartment once more, but the fear had been real and inexplicable. Why did Amy sound off during that conversation? Could it have been the alcohol? Could it? That's why he was writing these experiences down. It helped him remember. She said she'd been at the party, but there was no background noise at all. Maybe she'd stepped outside. No, because then he'd be able to hear the wind. Or should he? He needed to see if the wind was still blowing outside. Monday. He's writing his thoughts down on paper again. He had no idea what he'd expect to see when he ran back up the stairwell last night, peering out the window. It all seemed ridiculous now, especially since last night's fear seemed so distant and unreasonable. He can't wait to go out into the sunlight. He's going to check his email, shave, shower, and get out of that dingy, cramped apartment. But wait, what was that? That noise? Thunder? There'd be no sunlight and fresh air today. Going up the stairwell revealed only disappointment as he peered out the tiny window on the heavy metal door, seeing rain slamming into it. A small amount of dim, gloomy light shone through the window, but it was enough to tell him it was day. A very rainy, blustery, wet day. He pressed his face up against the window, hoping to see outside better as the lightning flashed. But the rain's too heavy, and he can only see vague shapes moving at odd angles through the waves of water that washed down the window. He turned around, but instead of going home, he got the urge to climb the stairs. The third floor was the tallest floor of the building, and here he stops. The outer wall of the stairwell had thick glass that warped with age, scattering the light and making visibility pretty much zero. He enters the third floor itself, walking by the closed apartment doors. They'd been painted blue once, but like everything else in the building, the color had faded long ago. It was silent, only the sound of the rainstorm outside. But it was the middle of the day, so he wasn't surprised nobody was home. He couldn't shake the idea that the doors were like weathered granite monoliths erected by some ancient, forgotten civilization for some unfathomable purpose. Then the lightning flashes, and for just a moment he could have sworn that the faded blue wood looked exactly like rough stone. He laughs at himself for letting his imagination run away with him. Then he remembers the alcove with the inset window halfway down that floor's hallway. He runs to the window, eager to see a human being in the world outside, but as he goes to lift the window and peer out of it, a sudden terrifying fear hits him. If he opened that window, he would see something terrifying on the other side of it. But what? He has no idea, but it's enough to make him back off the window. And that's when he returns to write his experience down. Done. He came up with a plan. He was going to get his webcam. The cord wasn't long enough to go all the way up to the third floor, but he could use it to surveil his own floor. He'd stick it between the two soda machines and hide the wire with black tape, camouflaging it against the black plastic strip that runs along the base of the hallway's walls. Seemed silly, but he's really got nothing better to do. But nothing happened. He propped open the hallway to stairwell door and flung the heavy front door wide open, running like hell back down to his room. He watched the webcam to see if something terrible was pursuing him, but there was nothing. He wished the camera's position was different so he could actually see out of the front door, but hey, somebody's online. He got out an old webcam and set it up so he could video chat. He didn't explain to his friend why he wanted to video chat, and the two shared a mostly empty conversation, but damn, it felt good to see another person's face again. That gnawing fear that had been plaguing him lately had mostly passed, but later the thought hit him. There was something odd about the conversation. His friend seemed to be very vague in his responses. He couldn't even recall one specific thing his friend had said, but he did ask for his email address to keep in touch, and oh, there's an email now. It's Amy. She asked for him to meet for dinner where they usually go, a pizza joint. He's getting dressed, and the thought of delicious pizza is a good motivator. All he's been eating lately is whatever random food's in his fridge. He's ready to leave when there's another email. He opens the email and scans it. It's from an old friend, and it's been sent to every person in that friend's address book. It reads simply, "Seen with your own eyes, don't trust them." What the hell's that supposed to mean? The words shock him, and he goes over them again and again in his mind. It seems like a desperate, unfinished email, as if it'd just been sent before something happened. He was ready to disregard the email as just spam or a computer virus or something, but those words kept ringing in his head. Seen with your own eyes. He reads back over his journal and can't help but think how for the last few days he hasn't seen another person with his own eyes or talked to someone face to face. The strange video chat with his friend, the random wrong number, the oddly silent return call from Amy claiming she was at a party, and the friend then asked for his email address and then got an email just a few minutes later. And then the fear grips him. He told Amy over the phone that he was just half hour's walk from 7th Street. They know he's near where she called from. What if they're trying to find him? Where in the world is everyone else? And why hasn't he seen or heard anyone else in days? This is insane, he thinks. He needs to calm down. He paces his apartment furiously, waving his cell phone around to see if he can get a single bar of signal through the thick concrete walls. Finally, near one ceiling corner in his tiny little bathroom, he gets it, one bar. He He sends a text to every number on his phone. You seen anyone face-to-face lately? He keeps the message short and cryptic so as to not betray his fear. He just wants a response, even if it's someone telling him he's crazy. He tries to call, but if he brings the phone down out of the corner to his mouth, he loses all his service. And that's when he remembers the computer and rushes over. He sends an instant message to everyone on his contact list that's online. Nobody responds. His messages grow more and more frantic. He tells everyone that he's home. He invites them over, asks them to stop by and see him for any number of reasons. He just needs to see someone's face. Then he tears his apartment apart, looking frantically for some other way to contact another human being, but without opening the door and going outside. He knows it's crazy, but what if there is real danger out there? He needs to be sure it's safe out there, and he needs a reply, so he tapes his phone to the corner of the ceiling where it gets its one lonely bar of reception. Tuesday. The phone actually rang. He must have fallen asleep, exhausted from last night's rampage. He wakes up to the phone ringing and rushes to the bathroom. It's Amy. She's really worried about him and has been trying to contact him since the last time they talked. She's coming over, and yes, she knows where he lives. He's mortified at his behavior lately. He wants to destroy the journal, so nobody knows how crazy he's been lately. Also, he looks terrible. His eyes have sunken in and stubble's growing thick and dark. His apartment is also trashed, but he needs Amy to see what he's been through, so he's not going to clean it up. But he's not crazy, he's just the victim of extreme probability. He just happened to leave his apartment when nobody else was around, that's all. It's a reassuring thought, made better by his rediscovery of the television in his closet. He sets it up and lets it drone on in the background. A nice reminder that there is a world out there past his concrete walls. He's glad that Amy is the one who responded to him. She's been his best friend for years, and she has no clue, but he counts the day he met her as one of the happiest in his life. He can still go back to that warm summer day on the playground. It felt like they sat and talked for days. They were grown by then, far too old to play, but they hung out and just chatted together. It's a warm memory, and it helps him escape the dingy reality of his basement apartment and all the haunting thoughts that come with it. A knock at the door. It wouldn't be until later that he would find it odd that he didn't see her through the camera he'd hidden between the soda machines. He figured it was probably just bad positioning, but he should have known. He yelled out the door jokingly that he had a camera between the soda machines, and he'd watched Amy walk over to the camera and bend over, smiling and waving. Hey, I know it's weird. I've had a few weird days. He talks into the mic attached to the computer. Must have. Open the door, John. But he hesitates. How could he be sure it was really her? Hey, humor me for a second. Tell me one thing about us. Just prove that it's really you. She gives the camera a weird look. All right. We met randomly at a playground when we were both way too old to be there. He sighs. The fear fades. This was so ridiculous. Of course it was Amy. He never told anyone how he met Amy. Nobody but the real her could know how they met. All right, I'll explain everything. Be right there. He rushes to the bathroom and makes himself as presentable as possible. He looked terrible, but Amy would understand in that special way best friends do. He snickers at his own behavior and the mess he's made of his place, tearing it apart looking for what? He couldn't even remember. The trash was overflowing and the bed had been tipped all the way over on its side in a desperate search for who knows what. As he turns to the door and goes to open it, his eyes fall on the old webcam, the one he'd used to video chat with his friend. It was lying haphazardly tossed on its side, the lens pointed straight at the table with his open journal. Terror grips him. He'd asked Amy to prove it was really her, and she told him the one thing nobody could have possibly known but them, unless someone on the other side of the webcam had watched him write it into his journal just now. He screams in terror and rushes to the webcam, snatching it and stomping it on the floor. The door shakes, the doorknob turns, but he can't hear Amy's voice through the door. Was the basement door too thick? Or was Amy not even outside and something else was trying to get in? He saw her through the webcam outside, heard her through his speakers, but how could he know she was really real? He screams and shouts for help as he piles furniture up against the door. Friday. Or at least he thinks it's Friday. He's broken everything electronic. All that's left is the journal that he writes into, and the computer smashed to pieces. Anything that anyone could hack into and snoop on him is destroyed. He goes over the last week in his mind time and again. Everything anyone has said to him via phone or email or Amy through the door, it was all info he'd already written or given out himself. He'd got nothing new back. It was as if something was trying to trick him to get outside. All the way back at the start, Amy on the phone, she was basically asking him to open the door and go outside with her. He runs the possibilities through his mind. His logical side says it's just simple, bad probability. He just happened to go outside when nobody was around. He just happened to get a random nonsense spam email by pure chance. But another voice tells him that there is something out there wanting to get him. Extreme convergence of probability is the only thing that's kept him alive. He never opened the window on the 3rd floor. He never opened the front door, except for that stunt with the hidden camera when he rushed back to his apartment. He hasn't even opened his own front door since then. Whatever's out there, if anything at all, never appeared inside the building until he opened that front door. Maybe the reason he hasn't seen it in the building before is that it was busy getting everyone else, until he stupidly betrayed his location by calling Amy. Call that failed until he got a return call asking for his name. The terror is overwhelming as his mind wrestles with the pieces of the puzzle. Was that email random? Or was it cut off right before a horrible fate befell his friend? Was it a desperate warning? Seen with my own eyes, don't trust them. Why was it exactly what he'd been suspicious of? Did it have mastery over all electronics? It had to have a physical form and had actually knocked on his door when it took the form of Amy. Maybe this entity can't go through doors. His mind races back over all the books and movies he'd ever seen or read, trying to find an explanation. Could doors be some sort of ward against whatever this thing is? Maybe it's just not strong enough to bash through a heavy wooden door, let alone the thick steel door at the front entrance to the building. But why did it want him specifically? If it wanted to kill him, it could just wait until he starved to death. What if it doesn't want to kill him? What if it has something far more horrific in store? How can he escape this nightmare? A knock at the door. It's Amy, or at least her voice, along with 2 policemen and a psychiatrist. His mind races, thinking through all the ways that the voices could be faked electronically. He wishes he hadn't destroyed his computer so he could look at them through the webcam. Why did it take 3 days for them to come for him? Maybe it took 3 days to come up with a scheme that would convince him to open the door. The psychiatrist is convincing, unless it's a clever ploy to get him to open the door. The psychiatrist has an older voice, strong and authoritarian, but caring. It's comforting. He's desperate to see another human being with his own eyes. The psychiatrist says he's suffering from something called psychosis, and he's just one of thousands of people nationwide who've broken down after being triggered by a suggestive email that, quote, got through somehow. Got through somehow? He thinks that the psychiatrist means it spread through the country inexplicably, but what if this entity just slipped up and revealed a vital piece of information? He's suspicious, deeply suspicious. The psychiatrist claims he's part of a wave of emergent behavior, and a lot of other people are having the same problem. That would explain the strange email. He didn't get the original triggering email, just a watered-down part of it that his mentally unstable friend had sent out, trying to warn everyone of his paranoid fears. The psychiatrist claimed that that's how the problem spreads, and he could have spread it too with his random text and an instant message to his entire address book. Some of those people could be breaking down right now, triggered by something he'd accidentally sent them, something their delusional mind could be interpreting in a way that powers their personal delusions, like a text saying, "Seen anyone face-to-face lately?" The psychiatrist says he doesn't want to lose anyone else. You're one of the smart ones. So smart, you make up connections that shouldn't be there. The psychiatrist says it's easy to get caught up in the paranoia thanks to our fast-paced world, a place that's constantly changing and more of our interactions are simulated and online. It's a great explanation. Perfect, really. It explains literally everything, and why should he stay locked up in this tiny apartment, festering in his own delusions until he starves to death? All he needs to do to get better is just open the door and get help. It's a perfect explanation, and that's exactly why he refuses to open the door. How could he be sure what's real and what's not? Signals through a camera can be hijacked, emails and video faked. Even what he sees on TV right now lying broken on that floor, how can he know for sure any of it's real? It's all just signals and waves and bashing at the door. The entity's trying to get inside. It has to be. There's no way to fake the sound of men grunting and smashing against the heavy wooden door so realistically. It's coming in and it's going to get him. But at least he'll finally see the entity with his own eyes. There's no way left for it to deceive him. He's ripped apart every electronic device in his apartment. It can't deceive flesh and blood eyes. Or can it? Seen with your own eyes, don't trust them. Wait, what was that desperate message telling him? To only trust his eyes? Or warning that he couldn't trust them either? What even is the difference between a camera and eyes? They both turn light into electrical signals and they're the exact same. He can't be deceived. He has to be sure. He has to be sure. Date unknown. He's been calmly asking for paper and pen day in, day out, until they finally give it to him. Not that it matters anymore. What's he going to do with a pen? Poke his eyes out? The bandages over his hollow sockets feel like a part of him now, and the pain has long ago faded. He works the pen over the paper, figuring it'll be his last chance to write legibly. Without his eyes to guide his hand, he'll soon forget the motions involved in writing. It's an indulgence, the writing, a relic from another time, because he's certain everyone in the world is dead. or suffered a fate far worse. He sits against the padded wall of his room day in and day out. The entity brings him food and water. It masquerades as a kind of nurse or an unsympathetic doctor. He suspects that the entity has figured out his hearing has sharpened considerably since he lost his vision, because he can hear it faking whispered conversations in the hallway outside on the off chance he might hear. A nurse talks about having a baby soon. One of the doctors has lost his wife in an accident. None of it matters. None of it's real. None of it gets to him. Except her. The thing comes to him masquerading as Amy. Its recreation is perfect. It sounds and feels exactly like her. Even produces a reasonable facsimile of her tears that he can feel on the lifelike cheeks. When it first dragged him here, it told him all the things that he wanted to hear. That it loved him. That it didn't understand why he'd done this. That they could still have a life together if he'd only stop insisting he was being deceived. It needed him to believe she was real. And he almost fell for it. He doubted himself for a long time. In the end, though, it was all too perfect, too flawless, too real. The false Amy would come every day, then every week, then finally stopped coming altogether. But he knows the entity won't give up. The waiting game is just like another one of its gambits. He will resist the rest of his life if that's what it takes, because he knows the entity needs him to fall for its deception. And maybe if he can resist, he can stop its agenda. Maybe the real Amy is still alive out there somewhere. It's his resistance that's stopping the entity and keeping him alive. He holds on to that hope as he rocks himself back and forth alone in his cell. He'll never give in. He'll never break. He's a hero. The doctor reads the note the patient scribbled on. It's barely legible, written in a shaky script of a man who can no longer see. He wanted to smile at the man's resolve, a reminder of the human will to survive, but he knew the patient was completely delusional. After all, a sane man would have fallen for the deception a long time ago. The doctor wanted to smile. He wanted to whisper words of encouragement to the delusional patient. He wanted to scream, but the nerve filaments that wrapped around his head and drove into his eyes prevented him from it. Instead, his body stood up rigidly like a puppet, and he walked into the patient's room once more to tell him once again that he was wrong. There was nobody trying to deceive him. Now go check out Smile Dog Creepypasta Explained, or click this other video instead.